Welcome to Wise Move, where we dive into real estate, real life, and real wisdom. I'm your host, Meredith Buckland, a top realtor in the greater Atlanta area with over 12 years of experience. I have had the privilege to help hundreds of clients navigate their moves successfully while gaining a wealth of wisdom along the way. As Einstein said, wisdom is not a product of schooling, but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it. So join me as I connect with clients, colleagues, and industry experts to discuss market trends, share valuable advice, along with real-life stories that can help make every move a wise move. Welcome back to Wise Move. I am here with a friend, Walt Anderson, and client, and he is the senior principal lead at Chick-fil-A here in Atlanta. He helps transition restaurants and mentors future leaders. So a big development leadership role there. And Walt, welcome to this podcast.
Hello.
Great to have you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, as we say in the business.
Yes, well, it's my pleasure to have you. And of course, Walt, you have been a longtime friend and client of mine, and we've walked through the journey of real estate in the recent past and looking for the future. And so I just wanted to share some of our experience together in that and set the stage. Going back a little bit in time, Walt, you and I happened to meet years ago when I was not a realtor, but I was actually working for a private school in marketing and development, and you were at Chick-fil-A, and our paths crossed because you were providing the food service for our events, and we crossed paths back so many years ago, and all of that kind of started our journey together and really discussions about family and education and housing for your children and where mine were. And at that point I wasn't a realtor, so we started that introduction and then moved into the phase later with that. So that to me is always just an interesting journey, and I know you probably remember that moment, and from there you can probably elaborate the next steps that happened with your family from there.
Yeah, so we met over a chicken mini tray delivery and probably a box of coffee and some orange juice when you were working at the school there up the street from the Chick-fil-A restaurant that I was a director for. So I worked in the restaurant for a number of years for a couple of different Chick-fil-A operators. And had the opportunity to deliver to the school you were working at and got to meet you there. You're underselling some of the story because you were an integral part of even my wife getting a job at the school as a teacher, and both of my daughters going to school there. And so that was just a real blessing to get to know you and your family in that way. And then later, as you stepped into a full-time career in the real estate business, we partnered with that on the home purchase of the home I'm sitting in right now in my basement office down here. And so worked in the restaurant for a while, got an opportunity, as you mentioned earlier, a couple of years ago to go on corporate staff with Chick-fil-A and have really loved that. It was a long journey with Chick-fil-A, as it is for many people, figuring out the right fit and going through the process. But during 2020, we were renting. We'd been renting for a long time and really just wanted to get into a home that we could actually build upon. Financially felt like it was a good time. I don't think any of us knew that we were buying at the absolute right time. And I know you're a person of faith, as am I, and I feel like God really orchestrated that timing in a really beautiful way. And so we bought low and then the market went, which we didn't know was low at the time, but we bought low and then the market went crazy. And so we have really been fortunate to really build some equity in this home over the last several years, even as you mentioned, thinking more towards the future and in the next coming years of potentially making another purchase. And honestly, working with you and purchasing this home set us up to be able to even think that way today.
Yeah, it was an interesting journey with you all because as you're in a Chick-fil-A role, or as that you're moving up in that, your wife was in a private school teacher role, you're both trying to balance what can we do? Can we move from where we're renting to owning our own home? And we need a home for our daughters who are at that time, I think were they still in elementary school or middle school?
Yeah, they were probably just coming into middle school at that time. Yeah, that's
so
right.
That all was a kind of key area. And the journey of finding you guys a home, I remember we specifically looked for, especially even though they were probably going to go to a private school. We looked specifically at the community schools that the home would be in. And
Yes.
for you, do you remember that process and some of the things that were key to you guys as you considered a
Yeah.
home in that regard?
Yes. Honestly, you are correct. They were in private school at that time. I left Chick-fil-A for a brief time during that time and wasn't really sure exactly what that would look like and was hoping to still be a part of Chick-fil-A in the future. And thankfully, I have been able to be. But yeah, so a couple of things. Number one, obviously, this is people that are listening to this podcast. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but we were concerned about resale value with the schools and knowing that wanting to be in a good school system mattered for property values and being able to resell. Even we didn't know if that would be reselling when we retired or reselling in a few years. We weren't sure at that time. But it actually was also about the fact that, yes, our girls were in private school. Are they going to stay in private school all the way through high school? We didn't know that. We were just taking it year to year. And to be honest with you, it worked out really well because we did end up making the move from private to public. And because we had purchased a home in a strong school district, our daughters were able to move into a really great public school where they're graduated and heading off to college now. So really it was one of those where it's, hey, make a decision that maybe you don't think you need today, but you might be glad you did down the road. And so think a little bit more long term.
Yeah.
You helped us with that. And then secondly, thinking about now the resale value of this home because of that, because of obviously what the market did, but also because it's in such a great school system.
Yeah.
We're in a great spot for where we want to be in the future.
So
Yes.
you in particular, your family happened to choose and find a home that was in one of the strongest school districts in Gwinnett County. And that really did, even though at that moment wasn't as big of a thought, it did become a thought. And your girls definitely benefited from that wise decision back then and how you placed it. But the journey, I loved it, like with you guys finding that home and realizing, hey, we can, in this new area that we moved, we can buy a home, we can find it. And you found one that had some renovations done to it. And then of course took it to another level of your own. But do you remember when you found that home, what that was like for you and your family?
Yeah, so if you remember, you showed us this home pretty early in the shopping process. And a lot of times this journey that we take, right? We start on this upward trajectory of probably some unrealistic expectations of what we want. Unless you're just generationally wealthy, you have a budget that you have to think about. And we think, and then, so I remember seeing the home at first and we were like, yeah, maybe, I'm not really sure. And I won't get too deep into this, but then we actually had an offer in for a home in another part of the county that was a whole nother podcast of how that sort of played out with some of the issues that really, because of the due diligence that you insisted upon with inspections and making sure that we dot the I's and cross the T's, we uncovered some things that really made us uncomfortable with moving ahead during that due diligence kind of period. And we backed out, and I'm super glad we did. I think that sometimes the shopping process, when you're looking at different homes, it helps you realize what you prioritize. And sometimes when you start the home buying journey, you think you prioritize certain things, and by the time you end up over here, and that's with the guidance of a great realtor like you are, you realize what actually matters to you. And so I think this house was much more of a blank slate. Like they had renovated it and brought it to this kind of like blank canvas. And so I think part of it was there weren't a lot of design decisions made. And so I think at first look, it was like, this one there wasn't anything that really spiced it up for us. But I think what we realized was because it was a blank slate, it was in an established community in this part of the county and was in a great school district, we were able to get a great property in a great community that we were able to come in and, because it was a blank slate, able to add our personality to the home. And I think we've been able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's often the challenge that I'll find when buyers start out. They sometimes have this kind of dream vision. And then the reality when you get out there realizing what can I afford?
Yeah.
And it's not usually the lakefront property. It's, oh no, that's
Yes.
not exactly what I thought. But within that, we still try to find something that like resonates with your goals. So the first home that you mentioned, yeah, you guys, I remember you fell in love with it. It had a lot of charm to it, a little bit more of that maybe mid-century vibe and
Yeah.
warmth
Kind of a
to that
craftsman
home.
style.
It's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, a kind of a beautiful little setting there. But then, like you said, we go through the due diligence of that, which we did a lot. We honed in very quickly because the home was on septic and the home had a little bit more age in certain areas. And there comes a point where you're like, okay, I can get through this and this, but then the unknowns of it also may need even bigger issues than I'm ready to take on
Yes.
or can take on in the near future, and especially with kids in school, or what does that look like? So that kind of in that process, which is emotional, like you get into
Yeah.
it and you're attached, and then you go to the discovery point, and you and I had plenty of conversations of, wow, this is a lot
Yeah.
of information now that we didn't know. And then you have to decide that maybe it's not right for you guys and back out of it. There's a lot of emotion in that journey. And I'm sure you guys went through it. And then, like you said, we looked back at that home. Hey, let's revisit that other one again. And it was more neutral, didn't have that warmth of it, but yet it also had some of the things we didn't have to face quickly with
That's right.
doing. I have to quickly tomorrow start this process of HVAC or start the water
Yes.
heaters or the roofing, or so all of that kind of were important elements to your
Yeah.
decision and was
And I
hard.
think, yeah, I think Meredith, part of what you realize in the process is like, man, I really loved the exposed wood beams in the living room of this home, but that is not going to account for the fact that I have to go in and redo the entire sewage and septic system. That beautiful touch in the living room is going to get all of a sudden that can start looking really ugly to you after you have to spend and dump all this money.
Yeah.
And really this house was in a much it was just in a better it was in better shape. And we've had a couple things, but for the most part really just haven't had to do a lot of those things that I think in the other property we might have, and maybe on the surface
Yeah.
looked a little bit closer to what we wanted a house to look like, but we've been able to do a lot of those things here as well.
Yeah, it's amazing to think as you're looking back that you said your girls are heading to college or in college and where they were when
Yeah.
you started that. So it's been a long time home, and you guys have built a lot of great memories, and you're in a great community still. But I know you've recently, as well, in the last year or so, you guys have really been faced with some new questions, which many people are at that point when their kids go off to college of,
Yeah.
is this the time to transition? And do I change homes, communities? What do I do? Bigger, smaller? What has that been like for you guys? Where are you guys in that journey of
Yeah.
discovery?
Yeah, it's funny. We're at that point where I'm doing what I remember my parents doing at this age, and I've got my kids in the back seat who are older now, but they're like, "Why are we driving through this neighborhood and looking at houses? Like, are you about to buy a house next month?" And I'm like, "No, we're just feeling out what do we want, where do we want to be, what community what do we want to be in, what matters to us in a home." And so that's where we are. We are really in this place where our oldest is entering her second year of college, and our youngest, who graduated in 3 years, is going off in the fall as well. And so we're in that, it's not fully empty nest because, as we know, with college kids, they're in and out and they're back and forth and all this. So they're around, but there's significant chunks of the year where they're going to be living at school. And so we're trying to navigate, we're in our mid 40s, and so we don't feel like it's really time to downsize significantly. I don't think that's where we are yet, although we've talked about it, but I think we've settled on that's not really where we want to be. We want to be a home where as our girls move into adulthood, Lord willing, they'll meet significant others and potentially get married. And again, Lord willing, maybe there'll be grandchildren. All those things are things that you think about in the future. And we want to have a home where everybody can be, right? Like we can have everybody around. There's enough space, open space for entertaining, for the kids and their friends and their future spouses and all that to have their own space. And so we're not thinking of making a huge leap, but we're thinking of this next home for us. being the home that we live in until we do need to downsize, until it's like really time to think about a more manageable property as we enter into that kind of last lap, which we don't feel like we're there yet.
No, I don't
So
think you.
yeah, I don't think so. So we're thinking about how do we find a property, and we like this area. I will say this because you've talked about selecting areas and where you want to be. A big part for us, a significant part for us, is our church community, and we've been a part of the same church for a decade now,
Wow.
and I travel quite a bit from my role, and because I even asked my wife, like, would you want to potentially move closer to where I work? Because I have about an hour commute right now, which I don't have to go every day. But would you want to move closer? And she's honestly, you're going to be traveling every week. I'm going to be home. I have my ladies and I have my church and I have my community here, and so I really don't want to uproot and move again. We moved a lot for my job and even with Chick-fil-A. And so once we got into this home, we really want to be in this community. And so we're looking at areas in this community, not necessarily right here, but in the surrounding communities, because where we are, the way we've invested in the community, the church commitments that we have, it's interesting. And I know you have adult children as well, so maybe you could speak to this also, but I've also found that my girls have said to me, hey, we don't want y'all to move to a totally different south side of Atlanta where it's like totally foreign to us. We would prefer, yeah, it's fine if you move houses, which thankfully I've got their permission, but it's fine if you move houses, but we really want to come home. This feels like home to us, and so we want to come home when we're coming home. And obviously you don't always have the luxury of making that kind of decision, but that's really where we're thinking and looking right now.
Yeah, that's often a consideration, especially as you approach that years of your children going off to college, and yet the fact of, hey, they're going to probably return with friends or in the near future, maybe with spouses and families of their own. So we still need the space to accommodate them, and we still want to be able to entertain. So we're not quite ready to go down to a ranch little home that is just in a community of senior adult living or 55 plus or something like that. In that journey, though, I think you've touched on some important things, and that's recognizing to the importance of the community that you guys have built within that. And that was probably very stabilizing and has been stabilizing for your family. So even your daughters, hey, if we come home, it may not be the same house, but we want it to feel like home in the community. And your wife, hey, the community is... That community for you guys has been so important. How did you guys go about getting involved in the community to the level that you have? That's a very important part. You can just move into a house, into a place, but then investing and really engaging that community is important. How did you guys go about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Prior to me working in Chick-fil-A, I was a pastor, I was a youth pastor. And so church has always been very important to us and really central to our community involvement. But it was interesting because this was the first time we had moved and had to find a church, because prior to that, it was anytime we had moved, we were moving for me to work at the church. And that obviously takes the guesswork out of where you're going to go to church on Sunday morning when you're going to be working there. And so it was hard at first to figure out where are we going to be? What is that going to look like? What do we value in a church? We'd never really had to ask those questions other than employment, related to employment. And when we landed on a church, we just wanted to get, our girls were young at that point. They were like early elementary school. And so wanted them to get involved in something that they could develop relationships and friendships in the church. And I think for us, realizing that them having good friends also shapes the friends that we have, because a lot of times as you have children, your children's friends, their parents become your friends, right? And so that kind of develops organically. And we rented in a community up the road from here, rented there for a while. We rented over in this part of town for a little while. And so I think over time, we realized this is really the community that we want to be a part of. It was serving and volunteering and getting involved through the local church. And then I think my role in the local Chick-fil-A before I went on staff at the support center at our corporate office, that was a huge driver of community for us, because you come to work in a neighborhood, in a community at the Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A's are really a community place, right? I mean, it's how I met you. And so I think that between my role at Chick-fil-A in the restaurant and our involvement in the church community, it really began to form this kind of circle around where we wanted to do life. And then you throw into that, obviously, what we've already mentioned about the school system and things like that. We don't have to get into that again, but all those things started to create this sort of picture of community for us that we wanted to make sure we were inside of that circle of community. And that's where we've continued to flourish.
Yeah, and I think that's so important for a family to not, or a person, individual, to not just go in and find a home, but find a place that they can really engage that community. And
Yep.
your daughters eventually became part of the local school there, and they're actually pretty creative. Your one daughter she's done local artist events as a musician and kind of grown in that. What are some other ways besides the church community that you guys have engaged it and allowed the
Yeah.
girls to benefit from that?
A lot of what you do when you're raising kids is your involvement is somehow connected to what they're doing. And they played sports throughout like their middle school years. I actually was able to coach their middle school basketball team, and I lined it up where one was in sixth grade and one was in eighth grade, and I was like, this is the one year I've got to coach both of them. And so was able to coach both of them. We were terrible. We did not win many games, but we had a lot of fun. And a matter of fact, if I could show you, I've got a picture hanging up in here that is just really special to me to be able to do that. Another thing is, as you mentioned, they're both very musical, very involved in music. My oldest is an incredible singer. They did theater, musical theater, and things like that. She did not really choose to pursue that as like a career. It's really more of just a hobby that she really enjoys. And then our youngest has actually really devoted a lot of time to playing the guitar, the keyboard, writing music, writing songs. She's also an accomplished singer as well. And she's actually going to be going to Nashville to study at Belmont University in their songwriting program.
Yeah.
And so she was able to play. She played local shows around here. Eddie's Attic is a pretty famous venue closer towards the city. Then she was able to win several open mic events and contests there. And so, yeah, music, theater, sports, all of those things have been things that we've really enjoyed doing together. And I think this area offers a lot of opportunity for those types of things. Whereas I think there's other areas you could live in where you're having to really try to find those connections. Yeah. But through the church, through these local theater and even school theater and music opportunities, and then of course the sports that we've enjoyed, particularly in those middle school years, were a lot of the ways that we stayed busy going from one thing to another, as I know you understand from your days of raising kids.
Oh yeah, and it's in having that community, you can't underestimate the importance of that community. So as you're looking to move into a place, finding that spot where you go, okay, this is a healthy place that I can benefit from and I can also contribute to and make it better and invest in that whole process is important, because that's all what makes up that aspect of your quality of life and living, and then that home that just feels like your girl said, and it's bigger than just that house at that point. It's like this area, this is what I identify with, this is coming home to me, and where they got established their roots and really flourished. And of course I noticed Caroline just ran the Peachtree Road Race.
She did. Yeah,
That's
she
right.
has been she has been so dedicated. She does Orange Theory and she does bar classes. She's a runner. And so that has really become her passion over the last couple of years.
Yeah, which is great. And again, able to jump into community events and get connected in that way. And just from a healthy standpoint of living and all of that. I wonder though, Walt, as you continue your journey forward and all the things that you're still contemplating, and then we're working together, and then from the past, what advice would you give or have given to others who are maybe where you were 10 years ago, 12 years ago, wherever you were in that journey process of, hey, we want to have our own home. We want to have a home that we can plant some roots down in and build a healthy community. What advice would you give to someone else as far as being prepared for it, as far as resources to plan? What would you offer?
First of all, call Meredith.
Yeah.
She is the best. I've referred you to several people. We'll continue to do that. I think part of it is figuring out the balance between being ready and absorbing some risk. I think that there's a delicate balance there. And it's people say if you wait till you're ready to get married, you'll never get married. If you
Mhm.
wait till you're ready to have children, you'll never have children. I think it's similar for most people, and I know some people have different financial levels, of course. But I do think that for most people, particularly your first home, there's going to be a little bit of tension financially to
Yeah.
go, hey, we're going to have to sacrifice in order to make this work. And that certainly was the case for us. But I think that, particularly if you're working with a great realtor who has great connections with financing and all the different aspects of buying a home, I think that it can help be a huge step towards building for your future. And obviously, as we know, as we've seen over the last several months, the stock market can be volatile and up and down, but I do tend to believe in investing in real estate. And I think it starts with investing in a real estate property that is your home. And I hope to, as the time goes on, to be able to invest in real estate outside of my home, to be able to build for the future and have investments that ultimately bless my family and my grandkids and all of that. So I would say figuring out, you got to have a budget. You got to know what, you don't want to bite off more than you can chew,
Right.
but you don't necessarily need to wait until there's no risk anymore.
Yeah.
There's no sacrifice anymore
Yeah.
because you may never buy a home if you wait for that. And so I think in order to build something, you have to be willing to sacrifice something. And so I would give that encouragement to anybody looking to buy the first home.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And often, sometimes we have people that are sidelined because they absolutely can't. It's like the answer is no, it's not going to work at this time.
Sure,
But I
sure.
still spend a lot of time preparing them for that moment they can enter so that they're as strongly positioned. So that's getting them with a good lender, making sure they're really ready, and then understanding the monthly financial impact of it. But if I have someone that says, oh, I'm just going to wait until after this political event or after this
Right.
moment until I have this much in reserve, often that market and everything else is still changing so rapidly that you're just never able to keep up. Or
Yes.
after that next event, maybe it's going to go up even higher and it's more
Yeah.
unobtainable. So getting in where you can get in safely and soundly, and then building that value in that home, in that community. And now, where you're looking, Walt, from where you were to where you guys are now, you're in a great position. If at the time you can stay there comfortably, but at the time that you decide, okay, we're ready, we found that next perfect place, you
Yeah.
can do it and confidently because you've done it, number one, but also you were able to really see your investment grow and take off. Where,
Yeah.
like we talked about, that first home, it might have grown, but there was so much that you had to put in up front on top of
Yes.
the price tag. And it probably would have been more of a struggle or setback than later you recognized. So
Yeah.
it's like you said, it's great to be ready, but then
Yeah.
to act and to have trusted resources, to have
Yeah.
someone that you go, they're going to walk me through this. They're going to bring to me good people to guide me in all these areas. So
Yes.
that's always a very, very important step. And you guys did it.
Yeah.
Of course, you're doing careful planning for your next future move. When is that? What does that look like?
One thing you said earlier in your when you were just talking about in the beginning was political. I'm going to wait till this political cycle ends or this, that, or the other. I think one piece of advice for folks that are looking to buy a home, particularly their first home, is do not make your real estate decisions based on the news.
Yeah.
Get connected to a local realtor who knows their stuff, like Meredith, who knows the market, who knows the areas that you want to purchase a home, and don't get either way, don't get too overly optimistic based on the news cycle and don't get too frightened over the news cycle. Get connected to a local realtor. They're going to be able to tell you what's going on there and on the ground, boots on the ground in that area. So I think that's really important for people to not get too high or low based upon the news cycle.
Yeah, definitely. And trying to keep them steady. And of course, in all of this, as I guide my clients, most of my clients are friends like yourself or referrals from friends like yourself. And so I place even more like seriousness towards, okay, they have asked me to help. I'm in their world. They know me. I'm not just a transaction person flying in and out of their space. I'm really here to try to bring them the wisdom they've asked me to bring. And so it's a very serious thing. So when I'm walking you guys through those steps, I'm not only prayerful through it, I'm also like trying to be a good listener. What does Walt and his family need? And what would be beneficial here and there? And who's a good resource above my own capacity in lending and above my capacity in the closing attorney? I don't have, that's not my license, but bringing you guys expert people. And I'm as invested in you guys having a good future as ever because you are my good friends, but you're also somebody that has asked me to help you walk through this. And that's a huge trust. And I've been grateful, so grateful for the trust that your family has given me. And that's a high level. And I am grateful to be able to even take the steps to walk you guys through the next journeys and what that looks like and all of that. So thank you in particular for that and being such a great advocate. You don't have to, but you do. And I greatly appreciate it. But
Oh,
so
it's
tell
my
me,
pleasure.
yeah,
And in a
tell me,
couple of years, let's do it again.
I know, I was going to say, tell me what's next for the Anderson family? Where do you guys, you've got girls heading to school, but have you guys made any next steps for work, life, business beyond that you're heading towards?
Yeah, so we're obviously focused on getting them settled into their new places. I think the big next step for us is kind of this next year of just feeling what it feels like financially to have a couple of kids in school
Yeah.
and really getting a feel for that hit on our personal finances. Then I think from there, it's really figuring out what is our budget and our timeline, right? And so I think the real pivotal point a year from now will be, all right, are we in a position to get the home that start shopping for the home that we really want while the girls are, while we still have this expense of them being in school? Or would it be better for us to wait a little bit longer and be able to shop at a level that we really want to be able to shop at as far as price tag? And so I think this next year is going to be pretty pivotal for us to figure out what is our timeline. And so if it feels like, hey, we could do something, but because of this financial obligation of college, it's going to put us in an area that we'd rather wait and be in a little bit better position to be in the community that we really want to be in. It's a good place to be because we're not shopping hungry, right?
Yeah.
So when you go to the grocery store hungry, you make bad decisions, right? But we're not shopping hungry. We love this home. If we wanted to stay in this home for another 5 or 10 years, great. That's not the end of the world to us at all. But I think this next year will really determine how quickly we're going to be able to move into that next phase of purchasing. And as I mentioned, we'd love to make a home purchase in the next couple of years and then even start thinking about how to have real estate investment properties
Right.
and go from just thinking about our personal property that we live in to actually having some investment properties. And so I think if you're talking about more of a 10-year trajectory, we'd like to be in our mid 50s with a home that we're really happy with for the longer till it's time to downsize and actually moving into building our portfolio of real estate properties at that point. So that's more of a future thing. That's not something we're thinking about right now, but that's something that we really want to begin moving towards.
Yeah, I think those are great. Those are great goals. And like you said, you're already starting to think about them because you've got to give careful planning to all of this, just like
Yes.
you did when you bought this home. And then you'll know at that point when it's right to take action and how to move forward within that. And it's going to be exciting too to see how your girls transition through college and the next
Yeah,
steps and all that comes and being the cheerleaders on the side for them
that's right.
and then the place for them to come home to and welcome them. So it's a great journey. These college years are, it's fun. It's different when you suddenly have these quiet moments
Yeah.
and then their noise fills the home again and it's all good. There's beautiful parts of each of it.
Yeah. The
But
role changes. That's
yeah,
right.
it does a little faster than you. One moment
Yes.
you're like literally feels like you just moved into that home in their middle school
I
and
know.
now you're like they're
It's true.
they're gone. So it's something definitely enjoy and take advantage of while you have it. But Walt, it was so great to have you on, to have your wisdom and advice for others that are doing similar journeys or considering similar steps, all of the planning and thought that goes into each to make a wise move and to make a decision on that. So I greatly appreciate your time today and just also your friendship and the trust that your family's given me. And thank you again for being
Well,
here.
it's really my pleasure, and we are extremely grateful for the relationship that we have with you as well. So thanks for allowing me to come spend a little bit of time with you.
That's great. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a great day and a great new college years coming up ahead.
Yes, thank you. You too.
Thank you for tuning in to Wise Move. I hope today's episode provided you with the tools and insights you need to confidently navigate your real estate, community, and life journey. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and please share this podcast with friends and family who are making their own moves. Stay connected for more real estate insights, and remember, every great move starts with a wise move.